I'm Dr. Imtazul Huda, presently working as Assistant Professor in the Department of Islamic Studies, Aligarh Muslim University. Dear learners and students, let's continue with the third lecture of the first week about the Wahhabi movement. As we have discussed in my earlier lecture, that Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab he returned back to his place of birth, Al-Ulana, that we can simply understand by the map that is that this was the place where he returned back. And after returning back to this place, he came under the patronage of Usman ibn Muhammad bin Muammar, a governor of the town, whose hospitality and promise to support helped Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab in calling people to the true and pure Islam, as I have discussed in the last lecture, that the people were or they had got deviant from the teachings of Islam. So that's why when he returned back to his native city, the place of his birth, he once again, under the support of the governor, he had once again started calling people and talk about the message of Tawheed. He talked about the concept of Tawheed. He stressed about the thought, what he had in his brain, and what is very beneficial for the people of his region. Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab urged the people to return to worship Allah only. And he also addressed the people that we should only adhere to the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because after the Holy Quran, it is the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that is the guiding force for the Muslim community, and each and every Muslim had to abide by the principles that had been laid by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the light of the teachings of the Holy Quran. Further, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab managed to cut down such trees which were considered to have or to possess the quasi magical powers, and majority of the people started worshipping these trees. They used to visit these trees, and they used to tie a knot with the thread, and they used to seek something from the trees, and they consider that these trees will bring some sort of goodness in their life, wellness in their life. Those who were sick, they consider if they will tie a knot or thread on the trees, their diseases would be cured, whatsoever they had. So these were the superstitious activities that were done by the people of his time in Arabia, especially in the region of Uana. Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, with the help of the governor, had also raised the tomb of the Zaid bin Ibn al-Khattab, who was considered as the or who or the dome or the tomb of Zaid bin Ibn al-Khattab was basically Zaid bin was the son of the second pious Khalifa of the Rashidun period, Hazrat Umar ibn al-Khattab. So he has raised the tomb that has been developed, that has been built up on the grave of Zaid ibn al-Khattab. Further, he also carried out a prescribed punishment for adultery. There is a instance, there is a narrative that a woman who belonged to the city of Uanak came to meet with Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, and she narrated that she has committed adultery, zina. As the biographer, there are numerous biographers of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. They maintain, they say that, or they write that, first of all, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab ignored what the woman has said about the committing of adultery or zina. But when the woman repeatedly said this thing to Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, then he had ordered, being a spiritual and religious guide of this region, that the woman should be punished for her adultery. The prescribed punishment that has been given in the Sharia. Another important aspect, that when Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab was traveling throughout the region of Arabia, for example, he traveled to Diriyah, he traveled to Al Ahsa, he traveled to Basra, and he traveled to the two holy cities, Makkah and Medina. So, this was to develop the socio-political backdrop, and further, his travel has also led to the spread of the his ideology, which we used to say as a Wahhabi ideology and thought from one nation to another, particularly when they share similar political issues. Further, we can say the Wahhabi ideology and thought is fundamentally a religious one. Very important that fundamentally it is a religious one that addresses the need for Islamic reform in the Muslim community. It was an urge to the Muslim and urging to the Muslims that they had to revert back, they had to come to the original teaching of Islam and should be firm on Quran and Sunnah. For this one, many scholar has said that he has talked about the Salafi concept. Salafi, the word Salafi literally means to revert back to the original teaching of Quran and Sunnah. Now, dear learners and students, we have to assess while discussing his biography, what were the theological influences, what sort of writings, what sort of thoughts, what sort of jurisprudence has influenced Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. First of all, we find that the name of Ibn Taymiyyah, a very renowned scholar of the 13th and the 14th century, and what we find that Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab was very much influenced. He admired the works of Ibn Taymiyyah. He had admired up to that extent that he has even written or authored a monograph on the work of Ibn Taymiyyah. The work of Ibn Taymiyyah was entitled as Al-Aqidah al-Wasithiyah. He wrote a monograph with the same title, discussing in detail what should be the Aqidah, what should be the beliefs of the peoples. He has written that one. Like Ibn Taymiyyah, we can say that Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab maintained that Allah has condemned those who attributes His blessings and mercy on others whom they associate with Him. Simply, it means that as Ibn Taymiyyah had talked about the concept of Tawheed, Abdul Wahhab, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, also upheld that this concept should be adhered as well as this should be accepted by the people. And this is the true one that the people of his region has to follow because they had got deviated from the true teaching of Islam. And further one, Ibn Taymiyyah has talked about that the people should not associate any partners. And this, if they will associate partners with Allah Almighty, it means they are just retreating from the principles of monotheism, that is Tawheed. And Ibn Taymiyyah has said that accept the existence of the equal God. We should not accept it. That Ibn Taymiyyah was of the view that we should not accept that there is a power sharing the God. God is only one. So Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab exactly uphold all the approaches of Ibn Taymiyyah, and he has very deep theological influence of Ibn Taymiyyah. Like Ibn Taymiyyah also, he had openly criticized the worship of idols, worshipping of the plants, worshipping of the objects, and also the pilgrimage to the tombs of the saints. Further, we can say that, like Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab also considered to spread the Christian community among Muslims. That these concept, that the concept of visiting, that was in the Christian tradition and custom, had somehow imbibed in the Muslim community. And they had started visiting the graves and even starting offering intercessory prayers also at the graves. They started worshipping the symbols and which became a serious problem and a manifestation of disbelief. Like Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab also forbade a man to turn to the grave in the prayer. He said that if we will prostrate, if we will do a sajda before the grave, it means somehow we have reverted us to the pagan Islam, the paganism, and prostrating before the graves is the heinous crime, the shirk. Thus, like Ibn Taymiyyah, he said we should not prostrate before the graves, which had become very common at that time because the people started visiting the graves also. Even they had started worshipping the grave of their forefathers and the Sufi saints also. Further, like Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab viewed that one should not over honor the orthodox Muslims. Simply, for example, there are numerous Muslim Orthodox personalities for whom we have a deep reverence in our heart. He said, no, we should not over honor them because if we will over honor them, somehow we will just try to elevate their statuses. And if we will elevate the statuses of such person, so it will somehow tend us toward the shirk. And further, he said that even the companions of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It means we should not honor such personalities like there were numerous companions. For example, Hazrat Abu Bakr, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Usman, Hazrat Ali, and many more. That we should not over honor them. We should understand how they had spread Islam and how they were firm on the faith. This we have to adopt and follow. Their firmness toward the faith, Tawheed. We should not over honor them. Consider they are as equal as the Prophet as, and we should not even just level up them, the status of them level up, so that they can understand that they are also as great as the Prophet also. And somehow it will lead to the shirk also. And if we will elevate their status, then somehow we will associate him with the Allah. I mean, Nauzubillah. This is absolutely wrong. So this was the thought of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, same like that of Ibn Taymiyyah. Further, like Ibn Taymiyyah, he considered that belief in soothsaying, the people of his time usually have a belief in the palmistry, in the soothsaying. They used to visit to the palmist, to the soothsayer, and want to ask about their faith, what has been decreed for them. So they also, like the Ibn Taymiyyah, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab says that this is absolutely wrong, that we should not, because fortune telling and the faith in the Quran cannot exist. This is the okay. Thank you very much. Another important aspect regarding the theological influences that Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab had a knowledge of classical Islamic text. He had studied all the things like all book of hadith, all book of fiqh, which were available to him at that time. And even he has studied the Sufi work also. For example, we can say that Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab laid emphasis on a return to Quran and Hadith after having deep knowledge of that one. He said that one should laid emphasis on a return to the teachings of the Holy Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, because only these two are the guiding force for us. And if we hold with these two things, then we will definitely lead a perfect life. Further, Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab had studied the Hadith literature also, and he had, on the basis of their content, rather than on the basis of the isnad, the chain of the narrator or the transmissions, he focused on the action, the intent behind it, rather than the ritual perfection. He talked about that we should consider the tradition instead of dealing with the isnad. It's better to consider hadith as the guiding force, as a guidebook, and the way Prophet had led his life. If we will adopt, if we will follow, it will act like that one, then definitely we can achieve the ultimate goal. We can perfect ourselves. So he talked about the authentication of the hadith on the basis of its content. Those hadiths was proved to be very perfect. He has to adopt it. This is the thing. Another important aspect, after having deep knowledge of various aspects, various Islamic sciences. When he studied the different schools of jurisprudence, majorly there are four Sunni schools of jurisprudence: the Hanafi, the Maliki, the Shafi'i, and the Hanbali. And when he studied and he understood that a community had somehow were blindly following any one particular school of jurisprudence that led to the taqleed, a blind following of a particular school of jurisprudence. Whatsoever the scholars of this school of jurisprudence had said and maintained and had recorded in the form of a book, they were blindly following like that one. Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab said, no, this is absolutely wrong. We should not, or we should not follow any particular one. So we can say that he outrightly rejected the concept of taqleed, and he considered that there is a way, there is a medium by which we can understand Quran and Sunnah also, and that one is ijtihad. So whenever we needed any sort of help, any sort of guidance, first of all we should consult the Holy Quran, then the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, that is the Hadith, and then we should also perform ijtihad. It doesn't mean that he outrightly rejected the works of the founders of the school of jurisprudence. Basically, he was against the blind following. He said if any one of the school has given a verdict, an opinion that sounds very good and beneficial for the public or the people, and it's beneficial welfare for the welfare of the people, then we can understand it. We can follow it. But it doesn't mean that strictly we have to follow any one particular one. No, we have to follow, we have to understand their works. Even he was of the opinion that these scholars of the school of jurisprudence did not have ever said that you should follow only mine. They said, we have conducted a research work, and on the basis of our research and understanding and the methodology that we have adopted, we have just framed out a laws, a guiding laws. If you found it beneficial for, then you can follow these principles, these lines. So Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab outrightly rejected a taqleed or blindly following any one particular. Instead, he was in favor of ijtihad. Simply as I have said that it is an independent reasoning. Now, let us have a small story regarding the ijtihad. This story is related to the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who appointed Maz bin Jabal as the governor of Yemen. And after appointing him as the governor of Yemen, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam put some question before Maz bin Jabal. He said, "O Maz, you have been appointed as a governor of Yemen. How you will do justice whenever any sort of situation arises before you?" Maz bin Jabal said, "O Prophet, I will look into the Quran, that much has been revealed to you, and that much as I have memorized. I will do justice in the light of the Holy Quran. Prophet said, excellent. But if you do not find any clear cut injunction, clear cut verdict in the Holy Quran, then what will you do? On that one, Maaz bin Jabal replied, O Prophet, I will look into your Sunnah. That much I have observed you. I have learned from you. Prophet said, excellent. Even then, Prophet had put forward a third question. If you do not find any clear cut verdict in the Quran as well as in my Sunnah, then how will you do justice with your people? Justice among your people? On this one, Maaz bin Jabal replied, I will do ijtihad. On that one, Prophet Muhammad said, excellent. Now I am very much sure that you are the best person to whom I have appointed. So that's why when we look into the thought of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab regarding his views on the classical Islamic texts, we say that he outrightly rejected taqleed, but he insisted on ijtihad, independent reasoning. We can understand the thing for the welfare and for the benefit of the people. Further, we can also say that apart from this one, he had a deep impact to the Hanbali school because at that time the Hanbali school of jurisprudence was very much prevailing in the region. First of all, what is the Hanbali school? Basically, Hanbali school, the foundation of the Hanbali school was laid down by Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. He belongs to the Abbasid period. Especially, he was during the reign of Harun al-Rashid and Mamun al-Rashid, the Abbasid Caliph. And he had just laid down a principle of law, principle of jurisprudence. Simply, he found that there are only two things, Quran and Sunnah, that are completely that completely fulfills the norms of the jurisprudence. Instead of dealing with any other thing, it's better to follow Quran and Sunnah. So his jurisprudence was based on Quran and Sunnah, and he has compiled a book of tradition, that is a book of hadith, and he named it as Musnad, which is known as Musnad Ahmad. So at that time of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, the society, the region was following the Hanbali school. Now it has a very deep impact on Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. While he was in a way of in his development of theological framework, the work of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab was inspired by the way of Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, the scholar of the late 8th and 9th century, and the way and method that he has, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal has compiled his Musnad. It has a very deep impact on Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab. And because according to Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, strict adherence to Quran and Hadith is the sole source of Islamic law, that is Sharia.